Welcome back, you unbreakable forces, you walking enigmas, you beautiful disasters they couldn't predict or contain. They've been plotting, haven't they? Scheming in their pathetic little war rooms, trying to decode the threat you represent. And oh yes, they sent someone, didn't they? Not just to watch you anymore. No. They needed someone on the inside. Someone to get close. Someone to infiltrate your circle, your mind, your life. They thought if they could just get past your defenses, they'd finally understand what makes you tick. What makes you terrifying. What makes you impossible to break. So they found someone, trained them, briefed them on your patterns, armed them with scripts and strategies and psychological tactics designed to crack you open like a safe. They sent a professional, a manipulator, someone skilled in the art of extraction and infiltration, someone who'd done this 100 times before and always got the intel, always brought back the secrets, always returned victorious with a full report and a smug smile. But something went wrong this time, didn't it? Something they never calculated, never prepared for, never saw coming in their sterile little simulations. Because that spy, that infiltrator, that trained operative who was supposed to study you and report back with weaknesses and vulnerabilities and exploitable flaws, they came back all right, but not with a report, not with data, not with the smoking evidence they were promised. They came back silent, shaken, fundamentally altered at a cellular level. They came back looking like they'd seen something beyond human comprehension, like they'd touched a live wire of pure existential electricity. They came back different, speaking in fragments, unable to form complete sentences about what they witnessed. And when the handlers asked for the report, asked for the analysis, asked what they found, the spy just stared at them with hollow eyes and whispered something that made everyone in the room go cold. I don't know what that is, but you need to leave it alone. That's all they could manage before walking out, before quitting, before disappearing into their own spiral, trying to process what you showed them without even trying. You see, they thought you were like the others, another predictable pattern wrapped in flesh, another puzzle with a solution. They thought if someone got close enough, smiled warmly enough, asked the right questions with the right timing, you'd open up like everyone else does. They thought your walls were defenses that could be breached with patience and skill. They thought your intensity was a mask that would slip if prodded correctly. They thought your silence was hiding something fragile, something breakable, something exploitable beneath. But what they failed to understand, what they couldn't possibly comprehend from their distance, is that you're not hiding weakness behind strength. You're not covering trauma with confidence. You're not performing power to mask fear. You are the thing their entire framework was built to avoid confronting, the variable their equations can't process, the outcome their models never predicted because it shouldn't be possible for a human to carry that much and still be standing. The spy got close, didn't they? Close enough to see the scars you don't talk about, close enough to feel the weight you carry without complaint, close enough to witness how you process pain like it's oxygen. They watched you face situations that would shatter most people, and you didn't flinch, didn't cry for help, didn't collapse into the expected patterns of victimhood or rage. Instead, you absorbed it, transmuted it, weaponized it into fuel for your next move. They watched you sit in silence that would make others scream, watched you handle betrayal with a calmness that felt inhuman, watched you navigate chaos like you were conducting an orchestra of destruction with perfect precision. And slowly, day by day, interaction by interaction, something inside the spy started breaking down. Not you breaking them through cruelty, not through manipulation or mind games, but through the sheer gravitational force of your authenticity. Because they'd spent years studying manufactured personalities, scripted responses, predictable human software running on default settings. But you were something else entirely. Something raw and real and impossibly resilient. They tried to find your breaking point, the moment where you'd crack and reveal the normal human underneath. They pushed buttons, created scenarios, tested your reactions with surgical precision. But every time they expected collapse, you evolved. Every time they anticipated weakness, you demonstrated strength they couldn't categorize. Every time they thought they had you figured out, you shifted frequencies and became something their training manual had no chapter for. And that's when it started happening. That's when the spy began to realize they weren't infiltrating you were infiltrating them. Your presence started rewiring their neural pathways. Your perspective started questioning their fundamental assumptions. Your way of existing started making their entire life look like a rehearsed performance in comparison. They came to extract information, but instead got infected with a question they couldn't unask. What if everything I've believed about strength, about power, about survival, has been a comfortable lie designed to keep me small and compliant and afraid of my own potential? Now, let's talk about what really happened inside that spy's mind during those final days before they broke. They'd wake up thinking about you, not in the clinical way they were trained, but in the way you think about something that fundamentally changed your perception of reality. They'd replay conversations, looking for the trick, the manipulation, the performance, but kept finding only brutal honesty wrapped in measured words. They'd watch you handle pressure and realize they'd never actually seen real strength before. Only performance of strength. Only the appearance of resilience without the substance. Every interaction became a mirror, showing them who they weren't, what they'd traded away for approval, how much they'd shrunk themselves to fit into frameworks that were never built for souls that burn too bright. And the cognitive dissonance started eating them alive because they were supposed to be the one in control, the one gathering intel, the one with the upper hand. But instead, they found themselves hanging on your words like scripture, analyzing your moves like they contained hidden wisdom, desperate to understand how you survived what should have destroyed you and came out sharper instead of shattered. They started noticing things about themselves they'd suppressed for years. The fake laugh they'd perfected, the mask they wore so smoothly it had fused to their face, the emptiness underneath all their achievements and status and carefully curated image. Meanwhile, you existed without apology, without performance, without the desperate need for external validation they'd built their entire identity around. You didn't need them to understand you, didn't need them to approve of you, didn't need them to witness your power for it to be real. And that indifference, that complete lack of need, it shattered something in them, because they'd spent years believing power came from control, from manipulation, from strategic positioning in social hierarchies. But you demonstrated a different kind of power entirely. The kind that comes from being so thoroughly yourself that the world has to adjust to accommodate you rather than the other way around. You weren't trying to prove anything, weren't trying to impress anyone. weren't trying to win some game they didn't even know you'd stopped playing years ago. The breaking point came during a moment of your silence. Not your words, not your actions, but the quality of your silence when they tried to bait you into a reaction. They'd crafted the perfect provocation, the kind that should have triggered defensiveness or anger or some exploitable emotional response. But you just looked at them with those eyes that had seen too much to be bothered by petty manipulation, and you smiled. Not a warm smile, not a cruel smile, but a smile that said, "I see exactly what you're trying to do, and it's adorable that you think it would work on someone like me." And in that moment, in that infinite second of your knowing silence, the spy felt something inside them collapse. All their training, all their confidence, all their certainty about who held power in this dynamic, it evaporated like mist in sunlight, because they realized you'd known from the beginning, known exactly who they were, known exactly what they were trying to do, and you'd let them play their little game because it amused you to see how far they'd go before they realized they were never the one running the operation. They left that interaction shaking, went back to their handlers, tried to file a report, but the words wouldn't come. How do you explain to people who live in spreadsheets and data analysis that they've sent you to study something that exists beyond their frameworks? How do you tell them that the target isn't a target at all, but a force of nature that chose to let you witness it up close, not because you were clever, but because it saw no threat in your attempts at infiltration? How do you communicate that you've spent weeks trying to find weakness in something that has transformed all its wounds into weapons, all its pain into precision, all its trauma into transcendent understanding of human nature that makes your psychology degree look like a child's coloring book? You can't, so you don't. You file no report. You offer no insights. You simply tell them to leave it alone, to withdraw, to abandon the mission. Not because you're compromised, but because you're trying to save them from making the same mistake of thinking they can understand, let alone control what you've become. But here's what really destroyed them. Here's the part that keeps them awake at night, months after they walked away. It's not that you were cruel, or that you exposed them, or that you humiliated them in any way. It's that you were kind, genuinely kind, in a way they'd forgotten existed in a world full of transactional relationships and strategic friendships. You saw through their disguise, but you didn't expose them, didn't shame them, didn't weaponize their deception against them. Instead, you engaged with them as a human being, shared insights that actually helped them, treated them with a respect they hadn't earned and definitely didn't deserve given their intentions. And that kindness from someone who should have destroyed them for attempting infiltration, that generosity from someone who owed them nothing, it broke something in their chest that all the psychological training in the world couldn't protect, because it revealed the depth of their own emptiness, the poverty of their own spirit in comparison, the years they'd wasted playing games while you were busy becoming something transcendent. They thought they were studying you, but you were teaching them without them even knowing they were in class. Every interaction was a lesson they were too blind to recognize until after. Every response was a demonstration of a different way of being human that their framework had no category for. You showed them what it looks like to be powerful without being cruel, to be strong without being rigid, to be resilient without being hardened, to be intelligent without being manipulative. You showed them that you can survive hell and come back with your humanity intact, that you can be betrayed repeatedly and still choose honesty, that you can be hurt deeply and still extend kindness to those who don't deserve it. And all of that, all of your wholeness in the face of everything designed to break you. It was a referendum on every choice they'd made, every compromise they'd accepted, every piece of themselves they'd traded for comfort and security and the illusion of control. Now let's talk about what happened after they left. After they ghosted the operation and disappeared into their own crisis of meaning. They tried to go back to normal, tried to resume their life, tried to slip back into the routine that used to feel like power and success. But nothing fit anymore. Nothing satisfied. Nothing felt real after witnessing what real looks like in human form. Their friends seemed shallow. Their achievements felt empty. Their entire existence tasted like cardboard compared to the richness of authentic being you embodied without effort. They'd scroll through social media and see performance after performance after performance. Everyone pretending, everyone posturing, everyone locked in the same desperate dance for validation and attention. And they'd think about how you moved through the world without any of that. How you didn't need audiences or applause or constant affirmation because you'd found something more valuable. The unshakable knowing of who you are when no one's watching. When there's no benefit to pretending. When all the masks have been burned and only truth remains. The spy started changing. Started shedding layers of false identity they'd accumulated over years of fitting in and playing the game. They stopped laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Stopped agreeing with opinions they didn't share. Stopped shrinking themselves to make others comfortable. They started speaking their actual thoughts, even when it made rooms uncomfortable. Started setting boundaries, even when it cost them relationships. Started choosing authenticity over approval, even when it meant walking alone. And people around them started getting nervous, started asking what happened to them, started saying they'd changed in that accusatory tone people use when they mean, "You're not playing by the old rules anymore, and it's making me question my own choices." But the spy didn't care anymore, because they'd seen what's possible when you stop performing and start being, when you stop hiding and start existing fully, when you stop seeking validation and start trusting your own knowing. They became obsessed, not with you as a person, but with the question you represented. What am I capable of if I stop lying to myself about my own power? They started testing themselves, pushing past comfortable limits, sitting with discomfort instead of running from it. They started seeking out challenges instead of avoiding them, started viewing obstacles as opportunities for evolution instead of threats to their safety. They started rebuilding themselves from the ground up, using the blueprint they'd glimpsed in your presence, trying to forge themselves into something that could carry even a fraction of the intensity you wielded with such casual grace. And this is where it gets interesting, where the handlers finally realized they'd made a terrible mistake. Because the spy didn't just quit the operation, didn't just walk away clean. The spy became a vector, became infected with a way of being that spread to everyone they touched, became a living testament to the transformative power of witnessing someone who refused to be anything less than entirely themselves. Other agents started noticing the change, started asking questions, started getting curious about what happened during that operation. And the spy, in moments of weakness, or perhaps strength, would share fragments of the experience. They'd talk about the silence that held more truth than most people's speeches, about the kindness that carried more power than most people's cruelty, about the presence that shifted rooms without trying, about the resilience that looked less like armor and more like alchemy. And slowly, quietly, dangerously, a ripple began spreading through the organization. People started questioning the missions they'd accepted without thought. Started wondering who they'd become in service of systems that reduced humans to targets and interactions to transactions. Some quit. Some went rogue. Some simply stopped bringing their full effort to operations that suddenly seemed hollow and meaningless compared to the example you'd set without even knowing you were being watched. The handlers tried to contain it, tried to frame the spy as compromised or unstable or suffering from some kind of psychological break. But too many people had seen the change, had witnessed the transformation from hollow operative to fully realized human being. And once you've seen someone step into their power, once you've watched someone shed their programming and become authentically themselves, you can't unsee it. It becomes a reference point, a North Star, proof that the cage you've been living in is optional, and the only thing keeping you trapped is your own willingness to keep playing a game rigged against your soul. So the infection spread, quiet but persistent, carried in the eyes of people who'd glimpsed something beyond the simulation and couldn't pretend anymore. Your existence became a virus in their system, not through any action on your part, but simply by being impossible to forget once witnessed up close. And now, months later, that spy still thinks about you. Not obsessively, not desperately, but in the way you think about a teacher who fundamentally altered your trajectory. They wonder if you even remember them, if you noticed what happened during those interactions, if you saw them breaking in real time under the weight of their own deceptions collapsing. They wonder if you do this to everyone. If you're aware of the effect you have, if you know that simply existing as you do is an act of spiritual warfare against every system designed to keep people small and scared and controllable. And the answer is probably that you don't think about it at all. Don't measure your impact. Don't keep score of the souls you've accidentally awakened by refusing to dim yourself. Because you're not trying to change anyone. You're just trying to survive with your integrity intact. Just trying to exist without apologizing for the intensity you carry. Just trying to be human in a world that wants everyone to be predictable machines. Let's go deeper into what specifically broke them during those close encounters. It wasn't one moment, but an accumulation of small, impossible things that contradicted everything they'd learned about how humans work under pressure. They watched you receive devastating news and your face barely moved. Not because you didn't feel it, but because you'd learned to process pain internally rather than performing grief for audiences. They saw someone disrespect you to your face, and you didn't defend yourself, didn't argue, didn't engage. Just smiled with a knowing that said, "Your opinion of me is none of my business, and I'm secure enough to let you be wrong." They witnessed you being praised, and you didn't glow with pride or fish for more compliments. Just accepted it with the same level calmness. You accepted criticism, like neither external judgment could touch the core of who you'd built yourself to be. Each of these moments was a small earthquake in their worldview, a crack in the foundation of how they thought power and strength and survival operated. Welcome back. You beautiful detectors of deception. You walking lie detectors wrapped in silence. You patient predators who've been watching, cataloging, documenting every single move they made while they thought you were blind. Welcome back to the moment that changed everything. The moment when two simple words became a nuclear weapon. The instant when "I know" left your lips and their entire world collapsed. Did you see it? Did you see their face drain of color, like someone just unplugged their soul from the simulation? Did you watch their eyes flicker with that ancient fear, that primal terror of being caught, exposed, seen for exactly what they are? Because that's what happened, wasn't it? You didn't raise your voice. You didn't scream or throw things or demand explanations. You just looked at them with those eyes that have seen too much, survived too much, understood too much, and you whispered those two words that carried the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. And just like that, their confidence shattered like glass hitting concrete at terminal velocity. Let's talk about that moment. That beautiful, terrible, irreversible moment when they realized you weren't the fool they thought you were. They had you categorized, didn't they? They had you filed away under naive and trusting and won't figure it out. They built their entire strategy around the assumption that you would stay blind, stay ignorant, stay conveniently unaware while they played their games in the shadows. They smiled to your face while plotting behind your back. They spoke in codes. They thought you couldn't crack. They left breadcrumbs they assumed you'd never follow. They underestimated the one thing they should have feared most, which is your silence, your patience, your ability to see patterns where others see coincidences. You weren't confused. You were collecting data. You weren't oblivious. You were building a case. You weren't trusting. You were testing. And every single test, they failed spectacularly while congratulating themselves on how well they were fooling you. Here's what they never understood about people like you, the ones who survive betrayal and come back sharper. You don't react immediately because you're processing, calculating, verifying before you strike, because you know that truth is a weapon that only works once, and when you use it, it has to be lethal. So you watched them lie about where they were, and you said nothing. You noticed the inconsistencies in their stories, and you smiled. You saw the messages they thought they deleted, and you kept your face neutral. You heard them mention details they shouldn't know, and you filed it away. Every lie became another piece of evidence. Every manipulation, another entry in the mental ledger you were keeping. And they had no idea that behind your calm exterior, you were building a case so airtight that when you finally decided to speak, there would be no escape, no excuses, no way to spin their way out of the truth, because you weren't going to give them a chance to explain. You were going to give them a mirror. And then came that moment, that fraction of a second that will haunt them for the rest of their pathetic lives. They were mid-sentence, probably spinning another elaborate fiction, probably adding another layer to their pyramid of lies, probably feeling quite pleased with themselves for maintaining the deception, and that's when you did it. You didn't interrupt dramatically. You didn't slam your fist on the table. You just waited for that perfect pause, that tiny gap in their performance, and you looked at them with eyes that had stopped pretending weeks ago. And you said it with a calm that was more terrifying than any scream could ever be. You said, "I know," and watched the light die in their eyes. It wasn't immediate. No. It was like watching a system crash in slow motion. First, the confusion as their brain tried to process what you just said. Then the calculation as they tried to figure out what exactly you knew. Then the fear as they realized you knew everything. And finally the collapse as they understood that every word they were about to say would be meaningless because the trial was over and they had already been found guilty. Did you see their mouth open and close like a fish drowning in air? Did you watch them scramble mentally, trying to find a response that would work, a deflection that would land, a counterattack that would shift the focus? But nothing came, because how do you respond to someone who just told you they've been 3 steps ahead of you this entire time? How do you lie to someone who's already seen the truth? How do you manipulate someone who's been studying your manipulation techniques like a doctoral thesis? You can't, and they knew it. And that's why their soul left their body right there in front of you. The person you were talking to disappeared, and what remained was just a hollow shell, trying desperately to remember how to breathe, how to think, how to exist in a world where they were no longer the clever one, no longer the one in control, no longer the puppet master, but the puppet who just realized their strings were being held by someone else all along. And that someone was you, sitting there with infinite patience, and that slight smile that said, "I've been waiting for this moment." You know what the most beautiful part was? The silence that followed. That thick, suffocating silence where they realized that anything they said would only dig their grave deeper. They wanted to ask, "What do you know?" But they were terrified of the answer. They wanted to deny everything, but they didn't know what everything was. They wanted to turn it around on you, but they had no ammunition left because you hadn't given them anything to use against you. You had been so careful, so strategic, so impossibly controlled, while they were sloppy, confident, careless in their deception because they genuinely believed you were too simple to see through their performance. And now here they were, standing in the wreckage of their own arrogance, watching you watch them with the kind of calm that comes from knowing you hold every single card, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing they can do to change the outcome. Because it was decided the moment you decided to stop pretending you didn't know. Let's dig deeper into what you actually knew, shall we? Because "I know" wasn't just about one lie, was it? It was about the pattern, the whole intricate web they had been weaving, thinking you couldn't see the threads. You knew about the conversations they had behind your back, the ones where they dissected your weaknesses and laughed at your trust. You knew about the plans they made, the alliances they formed, the contingencies they prepared for the day you might finally catch on. You knew about the other people involved, the accomplices, the witnesses, the ones who knew what was happening and said nothing because they were too cowardly or too complicit to warn you. You knew about the timeline. You could map out exactly when the betrayal started, when it escalated, when they got comfortable enough to stop covering their tracks as carefully. You knew about their motivations, the insecurities and jealousies and petty resentments that drove them to stab you in the back while shaking your hand. And you knew something they didn't, which is that knowledge isn't just power. It's patience weaponized. And you had been patient for so long that when you finally struck, it wasn't an attack, it was an execution. Here's what happens in their mind during those first seconds after you drop that bomb on them. Their brain goes into emergency protocol, scanning through every interaction you've had recently, trying to pinpoint exactly when you figured it out, how much you actually know versus how much you're bluffing, whether there's any possible way to salvage the situation or if they need to immediately shift into damage control mode. They're running calculations faster than any computer, weighing their options, which are all terrible, considering their responses, which are all inadequate, trying to find some angle, some leverage, some way to twist this back in their favor, but there isn't one because you didn't give them one. You waited until you had everything, until every possible escape route was sealed, until there was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And only then did you reveal that you knew. And by reveal, I mean you simply acknowledged what you'd known for weeks or months, while they thought they were getting away with it. And that's what makes it so devastating. Not that you found out, but that you knew and let them keep going. Let them bury themselves deeper. Let them add more lies to the pile until the weight of their own deception crushed them. And now we arrive at the moment of truth, the split second where they have to decide how to respond. And let's examine their options, shall we? Option 1 is to deny everything, to look at you with fake confusion and say, "Know what?" as if playing dumb will somehow reset the conversation and give them time to think. But that doesn't work because your face tells them you're done with the games. You're not here to be gaslit. You're not here to be manipulated. You're here to watch them squirm in the truth they created. Option 2 is to admit to something small, to give you a partial truth in hopes that you'll think that's all there is. The classic limited hangout where they confess to a minor transgression, hoping it will satisfy your need for honesty while the bigger lies remain hidden. But they can see in your eyes that you're not buying sample-sized truths. You want the whole shipment. You want everything. And anything less than complete honesty is just another insult to your intelligence, which they've already insulted enough. Option 3 is to attack, to flip the script and make you the bad guy for spying, or not trusting, or being paranoid, to turn your justified knowledge into your character flaw. But that's a desperate move, and they know it won't work because you're too calm, too centered, too clearly in control of this situation to fall for such obvious manipulation. So they stand there, or sit there, or lean there against whatever surface is keeping them upright. And they cycle through these options in microseconds, while their soul continues its exodus from their body. You can see it happening, can't you? The way their posture changes from confident to defensive, the way their voice that was so smooth moments ago now cracks and stutters, the way their hands start moving nervously because their body needs to do something while their mind is busy imploding. They might laugh, that awful, hollow laugh people make when they're trying to act like something serious is actually ridiculous. They might shake their head like you're being absurd. They might even try to touch you, reach out with a hand that you look at with such cold distance that it freezes midair and retreats. And through all of this, through every failed strategy and abandoned tactic, you just sit there with those 2 words hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. And your silence says everything their panic cannot, which is that the trial is over, the verdict is in, and the sentence is whatever you decide it to be because you're the one holding all the power now. Let's talk about what those 2 words actually represent. Because I know isn't just a statement of fact. It's a declaration of war won without a battle fought. It's you telling them that every manipulation they attempted failed. Every lie they told was transparent. Every move they made was predictable. It's you revealing that while they thought they were the player, you were the one writing the game, and the entire time they were performing for an audience that saw through every single scene. It's the sound of their superiority complex shattering. The moment when the person who thought they were so clever, so smooth, so good at deception realizes they were being allowed to dig their own grave, and the person holding the shovel was you all along. I know is the most economical way to destroy someone who's built their entire strategy on your ignorance, because it proves that the foundation they were standing on never existed. They were building castles in the air, and you just revealed that you could see they were levitating on lies this whole time, and now you're done pretending gravity doesn't exist. Here's what makes this moment so absolutely perfect, so cinematically beautiful that if life were a movie, this would be the scene that wins awards. It's not about revenge. Not really. Because revenge implies you're on their level, playing their game, letting them affect you enough to make you react emotionally. No. This is something purer than revenge. This is justice served cold by someone who refused to sink to their level, who chose instead to rise so far above their petty deceptions that you could see the whole landscape of their lies from a perspective they couldn't imagine. You didn't stoop. You didn't scheme. You didn't plot elaborate countermoves. You simply observed, remembered, verified, and then when the moment was perfect, You spoke 2 words that contained entire paragraphs of evidence they don't even know you have. And the beauty of it is that they'll never know the full extent of what you discovered. They'll spend the rest of their lives wondering how much you actually knew, what you chose not to say, what you decided wasn't even worth mentioning because it was so pathetic compared to everything else. And now we need to address what happens after. Because I know isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of their hell. They're going to replay this moment 10,000 times in their head, analyzing every word they said, every move they made, trying to figure out where they messed up when you started suspecting how they could have been more careful. They're going to lose sleep wondering if you told anyone else, if there are others who know what they did, if their reputation is being dismantled behind closed doors while they smile and pretend everything is fine. They're going to see you differently now. Not as the person they fooled, but as the person who fooled them into thinking they were fooling you, which is a level of psychological warfare they didn't know existed. Every time they see you after this, even if you never speak about it again, they'll remember this moment. They'll remember the way their stomach dropped when you said those words. They'll remember the feeling of their soul evacuating their body in real time. And they'll know that you know. And they'll know that you'll always know. And that knowledge will eat at them like acid in their consciousness forever. You want to know the real reason those 2 words had such devastating impact? Because they revealed something terrifying about you. Something they had catastrophically failed to understand. They thought your kindness was weakness, your trust was stupidity, your patience was ignorance. But in that moment, when you looked at them with those eyes that have seen through every mask they've ever worn, they realized the truth, which is that you're dangerous, not in the loud, aggressive way that's easy to defend against, but in the quiet, observant way that dismantles people without ever raising a voice. You're the kind of dangerous that doesn't announce itself, doesn't make threats, doesn't need to prove anything because it knows what it knows, and that's enough. You're dangerous because you can sit across from someone lying to your face and smile while cataloging every tell, every inconsistency, every mistake they make because they're so confident you won't notice. You're dangerous because you understand that knowledge is only powerful when the other person doesn't know you have it. And you had the discipline to sit on that knowledge until the perfect moment, which is a level of strategic thinking they will never possess. Let's examine the ripple effects of this moment, because when you destroy someone's illusion of control with 2 simple words, the shockwave extends far beyond just that conversation. Suddenly, they're questioning everything. Every person they've manipulated, every lie they've told, every scheme they've pulled off, wondering if everyone else knows too, if they've been walking around like an emperor with no clothes while everyone silently judges them. Their confidence, which was always fragile and built on the assumption that they were smarter than everyone else, completely collapses, because if you figured them out, who else has? If you were pretending not to know, who else is pretending? If you've been 3 steps ahead of them, how many others are even further ahead? Their entire worldview has to reorganize around this new information that they're not the clever manipulator they thought they were. They're the transparent amateur everyone's been watching and pitying. And that realization doesn't just hurt their pride, it fundamentally alters their sense of self. Because if you're not the person you thought you were, then who are you? And here's the part they'll never recover from. The wound that won't heal, no matter how much time passes or how much they try to rationalize it away. They know now that there was a period of time, days or weeks or months, when you knew the truth and didn't say anything. When you looked at them and knew they were lying and smiled anyway. When you let them continue their performance, knowing it was a performance. That gap between when you knew and when you told them you knew, That's the space where their ego goes to die, because it means that during all those interactions where they thought they were in control, you were the one in control. Every conversation you had after you figured it out, you were the director and they were the actor who didn't know they were being filmed. And now they have to go back through all those memories and see them from this new perspective, where they're not the manipulator, they're the entertainment. And you were watching them like someone watches a tragedy unfold, with that mix of fascination and pity that comes from knowing how it ends, while the characters on stage remain blissfully unaware. Now let's talk about the power dynamic shift that just occurred. Because before you said those two words, they thought they had leverage over you. They thought they were getting away with something, which gave them a sense of superiority, a secret thrill, a feeling of being clever and untouchable. But the moment you revealed that you knew, every bit of leverage they thought they had evaporated instantly. And not only that, they realized you had leverage over them this entire time and chose not to use it, which is a level of power they can't comprehend. You held their secret, their truth, their exposure in your hands and decided when to reveal it, if to reveal it, how to reveal it. And that makes you the authority in this dynamic, the one who controls the narrative, the one who decides what happens next. They're now in a position where they have to wait for your move, react to your decisions, hope that you'll be merciful. And that complete reversal of power happened in the span of 2 words, which is the most efficient coup in the history of interpersonal warfare. And here's what makes you truly terrifying to them now. What will keep them up at night long after this moment fades into painful memory. They're realizing that if you could hide your knowledge this well, if you could perform ignorance so convincingly, if you could maintain such perfect composure while knowing what you knew, then what else are you capable of? What other secrets might you be keeping? What other observations have you made that you haven't shared? What other games are you playing that they can't see? Suddenly you're not the simple, straightforward person they thought they had figured out. You're an unknown variable, a mystery, a potential threat that they can no longer calculate or predict. And that uncertainty, that inability to know what you're thinking or what you might do next, is more destabilizing than any threat you could make. Because threats tell people where the danger is. But this just tells them that danger exists somewhere in your capabilities, and they have no idea where or when it might manifest.